Jason had always wanted to get an Akita dog. He had liked this breed since childhood, and now the man's dream finally came true. The breeder handed him over the papers to sign, and having made sure that everything was in order, he handed over the pet carrier. Jason's hands were trembling as he opened it. The red puppy was sitting calmly inside. He raised his head and narrowed his eyes. It was love at first sight. The man named his dog Gunther. He came up with this name when he was still a young boy who dreamed of having a loyal, four-legged friend. From the very moment they met, Gunther accompanied his master everywhere. He grew up obedient and was very easy to train. Jason led an active lifestyle. He loved to travel and often went camping. The man adored the forest, and the company of a smart and energetic dog was just what he needed. Once, they went together to the taiga for several days. The dog felt great there. He rushed through the forest with a joyful expression on his face, drove chipmunks, barked at hedgehogs, and drove out some rodents from their holes. Jason wasn't particularly worried if the pet ran away for a long time. The forest seemed to be his element. The Akita could handle a wolf if need be, and he was unlikely to go against a tiger or a bear. The man didn't call out for Gunther when they walked around the forest. Many owners do that. They constantly call out for the dog to come back, but that's wrong. The animal gets used to it and begins to rely on the person, expecting to always hear their owner's voice. Then, when the animal gets lost in a frantic pursuit of a hare or some other animal and runs far from the owner, the lack of voice support can disorient the pet, and it might get lost. Gunther, on the other hand, always handled the long walks in the forest great. However, something went wrong that time. It was already getting dark, but the dog hadn't come back. Jason started getting nervous, looking for his friend, but all of his attempts to find the dog were unsuccessful. The night was restless for the man. Sitting in his tent, the man couldn't fall asleep, listening intently to every sound of the rustling grass or wind, and even the howling of some animals. In the morning, the young man decided to warm up some tea over the fire, have a hearty breakfast, and set out in search of the dog. Leaving the tent and other equipment at the campsite, anxious thoughts were swirling around in Jason's head. What could have happened? Why didn't Gunther come back? Did he fall into a trap of some kind? I did hear a lot of stories about poachers that hunt for tigers around here and smuggle them abroad. Suddenly, the man heard a loud rustling sound, and his pet stepped out from behind the bushes. Before the man had time to rejoice at his pet's return, Gunther started barking loudly and grabbed Jason by the sleeve of his jacket, pulling him in an unknown direction. The man immediately realized that his dog wanted to show him something important, but he had no idea what it was. Having arrived at their destination, Jason almost froze with horror. Two young tigers were digging up a fresh earth mound in the middle of the forest grove. The predators reacted rather calmly to the arrival of the man and the dog. Moreover, they seemed to be pleading for help with their eyes. Realizing that the tigers didn't pose any danger, both the man and the dog rushed to help them dig the ground. A few minutes later, they managed to complete their task and discovered a secret entrance to a crypt. There was an unconscious woman inside. While Jason was trying to get a hold of himself, the animals rushed to lick the stranger's face and hands. Having pulled himself together, Jason brought the young woman out into the fresh air. He moistened her face with cold water and started to give her CPR. Fortunately, the young woman woke up, but she was very weak. Jason called an ambulance and escorted the stranger to the hospital. Together with Gunther, thanks to the timely provided help, the young woman got to return to her normal life just a few days later. Then the young people got to know each other better and shared their life stories. As it turned out, the young stranger's name was Fiona. She was raised by her grandfather from the age of 7 after her parents died in a car crash. Her grandpa worked as a forester. He loved his granddaughter more than anything else in the world and taught her many useful things, including the love for animals and nature. Fiona often accompanied her grandfather on his rounds of the forest, and thus she knew it like the back of her hand. During one of these walks, the girl met her true friends for life, the two tigers. It was a clear, sunny day. Grandpa Tom was walking down a familiar path, while little Fiona was skipping around him. Suddenly, the granddaughter's voice pulled the forester out of his thoughts. "Grandfather, look! There's blood on the leaves, and the grass is crushed." The forester came closer and saw the splashes of blood on the oak bark and some scarlet drops on the fallen leaves. "You're a very attentive little girl, and I seem to be getting too old for this job. I passed by and I didn't even notice anything," Tom said, feeling rather anxious, looking at the drops of blood leading into the thickets. He also saw tiger footprints there. "Grandpa, what do you think could have happened here? And why is there blood everywhere?" Fiona kept asking. "If only I knew, dear. If only I knew. The forest has its own laws, animal ones. Every day in the wild, one life has to end in order to save the other from starvation. These are tiger footprints, granddaughter. A wounded animal in a rage can be extremely dangerous, so be careful and stay close to me." The old man answered, and, as if to confirm his words, they heard a sudden noise and some cracking of dry branches coming from the thickets. The forester's heart started beating loudly. "Grandpa, I'm scared," the girl whispered, looking anxiously at the bushes. And when the situation had already escalated to the limit, two little striped animals suddenly crawled out of the bushes and stared at the strangers curiously. "Oh, it's just tiger cubs." Fiona threw her hands up and hurried to the animals. "And where's your mother? Why are you wandering through the forest all alone?" The forester muttered. Of course, he didn't get an answer to his question. The old man couldn't have known that the day before, a group of illegal miners came across a tigress and her cubs near the river, where they had stumbled upon a gold mine. Naturally, no one wanted to give way. Therefore, the gold miners shot at the tigress and hit her several times. The poor animal was injured badly. While her cubs tried to hide in the forest, maternal instinct is an incredible thing. It drove the bleeding tigress into the dense thickets, away from human eyes, until she completely ran out of strength and collapsed at the trunk of an old pine tree. The cubs poked their noses into her body, unable to understand what had happened. Then they wandered off into the wild on their own, searching for food and crying plaintively, getting weaker from hunger. "Grandpa, they're biting my fingers and licking my hands," Fiona giggled. "They must be very hungry. Who knows how long they've been wandering out here all alone," answered the forester, taking a piece of bread out of his pocket. He broke it in half and gave it to the striped animals. The cubs immediately devoured the treat. "Let's take the cubs home with us. I'll take great care of them, I promise. I'll become the best student in my class. Just please, let's take them home." The girl was incessant. "Okay, honey. I feel sorry for them too. We'll take them home. Don't worry." Tom smiled. That day, the forester and his granddaughter returned home with the little cubs. They immediately recognized Fiona as their mistress, as she hugged the small fluffy animals. Fiona immediately grew attached to the little cubs. From that point on, the predators lived in the forester's barn, and when they were finally strong enough, they started going out into the forest a little bit. When fall came and the nights became colder, Tom went into the forest every morning to collect firewood to use on the stove. One day, standing by a huge century-old oak, he noticed that its bark was bristling strangely, sticking out unnaturally. The old man came up to the tree and pulled at it. There was a skillfully hidden stash in the hollow tree. It was a bag of gold. Tom decided not to tell anyone about it. He was afraid that the owner of the gold could show up. The forester didn't know that he had accidentally stumbled upon the stash of some foreign miners. They were mining gold illegally on this side of the river and thus didn't pay their share of the fines to the local government. The gold miners were convicted, but before being arrested, they managed to hide their gold. Tom kept the gold in the cellar for several days, and when he started feeling weaker, he told Fiona the truth about his find. Winter came, and when the first snow covered the ground, the old forester passed away. His granddaughter decided to do the right thing with the gold and handed it over to the state. The share assigned to her by law turned out to be very impressive and could allow the woman to live comfortably for 10 years at least. Fiona's life was good at first. She took care of the household and didn't forget about her friends too. Every morning, she bought fresh meat or fish and went to the forest to feed the tigers, who were always waiting for their human friend. But one day, the woman didn't show up to feed her predators. And that was the day that Jason and his dog saved Fiona from a terrible death in the crypt. Unfortunately, an ex-con alcoholic Rob found out about the money the young woman had. He only recently returned to the village, having served yet another sentence for robbery, and didn't know any other way to earn money except for stealing. Fiona had come home from the store and caught the man red-handed. He was trying to steal all her savings. When the woman started screaming and threatening to call the police, Rob hit her on the head with a blunt object. Then he got afraid that he'd killed the woman and decided to hide the body in the forest. Fortunately, this story ended well. The woman survived thanks to her faithful tiger friends and new acquaintances, Jason and Gunther, and the criminal went back to jail. Now, Fiona takes walks in the forest with her new friend Jason and his dog every day, never failing to bring a gift for her predator friends. It seems that the two young people are in for a happy future together.